You are listening to Eagle's Nest Podcast with Drew Banky. Shocking accounts of UFOs, NDEs, Bigfoot, and angels are the vibe, but no telling where the conversation goes. The aim is we all get one step closer to the truth of our existence with each episode.
You are listening to KUNX Digital Broadcasting, Kansas City, Missouri, and Van Buren, Arkansas.
Alrighty, welcome everybody to the Eagle's Nest Podcast. It is May 15th, 2022, and we are filming live from the San Luis Valley here in southern Colorado. Just above Taos by an hour and a half or so, just below Crestone and just below Blanca Peak. That's as specific as I'm getting right now. But yeah, San Luis Valley. If y'all don't know it, Google it. It's an amazing place. It's a place I've called home for a few years now, and yeah, it's just magical. It's a UFO superhighway. We have a UFO watchtower here by us, great sand dunes, Blanca Peak, and which has been the subject of several UFO encounters that's been featured on Gaia TV and blah blah blah. So, yeah, welcome to Eagle's Nest Podcast. We are live, also broadcasting on the KUNX network. Shout out to Race Hobbs, Margie K over there at OnX. This is our second episode under the OnX umbrella. We started off just my own YouTube channel. So first 5 episodes was just me, and now we're this is a second episode into the OnX. This will be on the air next weekend. This is not on OnX Radio, so you are listening to me in the past OnX Radio. Go and check out my YouTube channel, Eagle's Nest Podcast with Drew Banky. Give us a like, share, subscribe, hit that bell to get notified for any upcoming shows. Tonight we have with us Bret Lueder. He is an author, explorer, Bigfoot enthusiast, and just a general being that really understands consciousness. I'm excited for this. Conversation tonight. We've met each other a few years ago in Mount Shasta, and then we bumped into each other last year at Zen Awakening Festival. We was both speaking at, and we just formed a somewhat of friendship over the years, and I'm proud to call him my friend and colleague and just a brother. You know, I can really feel that where Bret's heart is, and you just stay tuned, everyone. You're really gonna enjoy the show tonight. We're gonna get into a lot of stuff, but before that, I want to give a shout out to River Moon Coffee. It's the fuel that keeps this podcast going. So shout out to River Moon Coffee, rivermoonwellness.com. Go over there and check out their other coffee order. There's promo codes on Sacred Journeys with them. Let me throw that up. Hold on, I gotta take a sip of this coffee real quick. All right, that's better. Let me see. So there's our website. That's my website, Sacred Journeys Within. And you can go there. There's promo codes for River Moon Coffee. You can get 20% off with that promo code. So go and check us out over at Sacred Journeys Within. Get the promo code for River Moon Coffee and get 20% off your first order. What else we have? Oh, upcoming shows. What do we have? Oh, past shows. We have last week we had Geraldine. Before that, we had Billy Carson, Laura Eisenhower, Joel Lambert, Grant Cameron, some of my past upcoming guests. Next week I got Jess Rogie. Bret was just on with Jess just a few days ago. Good friend of both of ours. She's been on her show, about to go on her show again soon. And yeah, Jess is just a great person. Can't wait to hear her story and how she got into all this. And the following week I got Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio. That's going to be a treat. Don't get to hear his stories very often. being he's a guest and he's stays busy with his own show. But we're gonna have him out here on the 29th of May. Then first Sunday in June, we're gonna have Jason Quitt, followed by Kevin Day. He was a radar operator on the Princeton, USS Princeton, that was out doing exercises with the USS Nimitz in 2005. They encountered 2 Tic Tacs that was, which footage was released around 2017 on mainstream media. He will be here on the 12th of June. Kevin Day, radar operating chief from the USS Princeton. He was on duty in the radar room during the Tic Tac incident. We're gonna get it straight from his mouth. He's gonna be here live on June 12th. After that, we have Ruben Langdon. If you don't know who Ruben Langdon is, he is a stunt double for Jake in the first Avatar movie. He's also owner and host of Interviews with Extra Dimensionals. That's who are going to be our primary focus that night. But if you haven't checked out that amazing program he has, go check it out over in Gaia. And it's called Interviews with Extra Dimensionals. He interviews people that are channeling and actually talks to off-planet intelligence. And in real life time, and he records these channelings and puts them out on his show. So can't wait to have him on. He's a good friend of mine. Met him at Contact in the Desert in 2019, and we have developed a friendship over the years. And I can't wait to have my good friend Ruben Langdon on June 19th. Then skipping forward to July 10th, we're going to be filming live from the Stardust Fest in Golden, Colorado. I'm also going to be speaking there. My speaking time is 11 a.m. On July 10th, Golden, Colorado. That's a Sunday. So since it happens to be on a Sunday, we're going to be filming live. The Eagles Nest podcast is going to be filming live that evening from the festival. And I really don't know who's going to be on yet. Maybe we'll just have an open forum and have it on the fly as whoever's there speaking. We'll see. I'll keep you updated on that. Oh, and fast forward way to the future. Hopefully, Bret will be able to join us. I know we were at Zen West, but I'm going to be speaking and presenting at Zen Awakening Festival November 18th. That's going to be in Florida, right around Orlando. So you can Google it. It's been a festival that's been going on for several years. We're going to have a booth there. We're going to maybe I'll be doing some tarot readings. I don't know. We're going there to have a lot of fun. My wife's got some jewelry that she's been making. We're gonna be selling some swag there, some t-shirts, books. I'll be signing books. So if you have bought a book or need a book, come there. If you bring your book, I'll sign it. If you don't have a book yet, buy a book and I'll sign it there. Well, that's what we'll be at in November. So Zen Awakening Festival in Florida. Just want to show off some of our swag. Maybe you guys don't know. We got some t-shirts. We got hoodies. And this all over at Sacred Journeys Within. You go to Sacred Journeys Within, go to, they're pretty sweet. They're all cotton. Didn't go cheap on them, guys. So they're quality and they will last. But those are you can find those over at Sacred Journeys Within. There's a shop page on there and you can find all that in there. So without further ado, I would like to bring my dear friend Bret Lueder into this broadcast and hold the applause, everybody. I know this is live, but here is Bret Lueder. Bret Lueder, welcome to Eagles Net Podcast, brother. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you for having me. Got goosebumps when you said that we were brothers and good friends. So I feel the same way, my brother. Peace to you and Elle and Little Hawk.
Yeah, man. Appreciate your support, brother. Like, it was really cool bumping into you last year. Didn't know you was going to be there, and just seeing you walk around. I think Nico let me know that you were there before I saw you, but that was an interesting time on Polymer Mountain. But
it was. I had fun. It was definitely interesting.
Yeah.
It was a wild mix of different crowds, I think, altogether. But all in all, I had a great time.
Yeah, it was good. Are you gonna come to Zen over in Florida?
Not that I know of yet, but Nico, if you're listening, there was talk about me going there last November, but that was right around the time that the airlines were kind of cracking down on the vaccine stuff and mandates, and pilots were kind of dropping dead, and so it's not cheap to fly someone out from California, so it didn't happen last November. I'll stay open to it though, because I know it's a wild time, fun events to speak at for sure.
Yeah, the Florida one is much different. That was like my very first time speaking there. I think it was like 2016, and I did like a really a really short talk about veteran healing with ayahuasca. It was just very of course, it was my first time speaking in public like that, and I was never really a public speaker before that. But yeah, that was my first one, and I'm excited to go back. Excited to go back. It's Florida is a good time, and November is always a good time to take a break from Colorado. So
right.
So we got some big news. Hold on, let me pick up this shirt. We got some big news in the news lately. We have a congressional hearing coming up on Tuesday. The government said they're going to talk about UFOs, first time in 50 years. Let me see. Yeah, this news just come out. I think it was on the 10th. I want to get his name correct. Well, I can't find it. I can't find it. Anyways, I posted it on my I think it's on Facebook or maybe Twitter. Maybe Instagram. Go check them out. If you're listening, go check them out. The information's on there. But this is the first time in over 50 years that the government said they're gonna have a public hearing on quote unquote UFO, not UAP, not maybe a weather balloon, not maybe swamp gas. This is a congressman from Indiana. I do know that. Congressman from Indiana that said UFO in a public forum on Twitter. He said on Tuesday they're going to talk about it in Congress. What's your feelings on that, Bret?
Well, I think on one hand, on the mainstream kind of level, it's amazing, because to use the word UFO, which you don't hear in an official capacity very often, right? So like you said, it's been since the 50s. But that's by design. The official government position on that is that we need more evidence, that the whole stage Project Blue Book and the Condon Report and all these things, from my point of view, have all been staged events to try to steer public perception in a certain way. And so my major is public relations. I graduated from Chico State University in 2000. And public relations is something that, from one angle seems kind of dry, but really it's the crux of the situation. Because when E.L. Bernays came up in the United States and showed the elites that he could get women to smoke in the guise of being patriotic, and when he told them that he knew he could do this because of his uncle Sigmund Freud's work that showed that women had penis envy. And so he said, well, from a very deep subconscious level, if I give women cigarettes, they'll have their own penises and they can be even with men. So while in the mainstream psychology threads will say that, Sigmund Freud's outdated, E.L. Bernays kind of showed that those deep subconscious kind of feelings are there. Otherwise, that wouldn't have worked. So he affected the CIA. And of course, the CIA started after Operation Paperclip, after he brought a bunch of Nazis over from after World War II. And so really, they've just been perfecting their techniques of public relations ever since. You could see this with the whole COVID phenomena. Cherry picking, for example. E.L. Bernays showed how to do that with cigarettes, and showing how to use only the scientific studies that backed up or promoted cigarette smoking, leaving out most of the other ones that showed that it was bad for your health. Well, I mean, you could see this with COVID. So that's just one example. We can get into that a little bit. but I see this whole soft disclosure as really just PR. I think they're throwing us bones because they know they need to, because they've done market and focus group testing to see that the public is waking up to this phenomena. As you mentioned, I think I forget if it was our pre-talk or in your intro, where contact's already happened, and they've been contacting individuals for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. They've been here as long as we have. Some say even further. Some say, depends who you talk to, that they created us. So, this whole idea of soft disclosure is from a real limited perspective. And so I think it stems from the Brookings report, which said that they couldn't just tell everybody that ETs are here because it would blow everybody's minds and it would destroy religion and the economies and all this. Well, personally, I disagree, because they're the ones that set up our society like it is, based on consumerism and corporate ideology. And it's only because they set us up that way that maybe that Brookings report is true. So it's my view that we need to really undo the way we've structured society now to look at our true reality and judge it for what it is and face it head on. And I think the answers will be a lot more easy to understand for the masses if they're not lied to every night on the news about a plethora of subjects. So really the crux of the issue, the crux of the issue, Drew, and I think you'll agree, is that for whatever reason, humanity has lost touch with who it is and where it's from. And hence, we don't know what our true spiritual powers are, our true potentials are, and where we're supposed to be heading. So
it's starting, brother. Like this reality is starting to unfold. And sorry to cut you off.
That's okay.
Yeah, but what gets me, I see, and I'm wearing one of my Stephen Greer shirts. I went to a C5 event last year up at Gaia. So I wonder, this is a perfect shirt to wear. And I don't know if you guys can read it. It says contact has already began. So, and I don't think it ever stopped. Is one of the things that we need to wrap our head around. This is not contact. This is just our relationship that is coming back together, like with people, like beings that we're related to. Like think about if people can let go of the linear timeline and think about what's really, see what's really going on and finally see the truth, whether it be through ceremony, meditation, or the hundreds of other doorways to go with inside yourself and find that ultimate truth. I invite you to go find that for yourself. These podcasts and talks that we do, and whether they be in person or on YouTube or something like this. This is just to bring the conversation in people's minds and let them know that they're okay to come out and start exploring this stuff.
Yeah.
As far as the government and Congress, my personal stance of it, they're trying to portray the UFO story as one of the biggest stories that's going on right now, where people need to wrap their head around that the UFO story is a small part of a much larger. This is the conscious evolution of humanity. Like we are being changed, our DNA is being changed. Like you said, like there's magic that's coming back online, like from Egypt times and things like that. These are coming back online just because we're allowing them into our consciousness field, and that's my stance on it. As far as Congress, and I will say this: everybody's on a journey on the same path, but they're at different parts of that path, and I do see it being beneficial for some people. That the government is finally admitting this, and I don't know what's going to come about. I'm not holding my breath on Tuesday that anything significant's going to come, but if they want to get down to it, they can talk about the consciousness aspect of UFOs, that we've always been here, that we're really, the contact is when you look in the mirror, because we're looking at aspect of ourself that's kind of like avatars. That's kind of my stance on it. But
Okay.
I'm sure that yeah, that's my stance on it. So that's my 2 cents. Uh, so let's. I'm not giving that any more time, unless you have any rebuttal or anything else you want to
Well,
say about it.
I would just say you hinted at it. Just the fact that the congressman's using the word UFO in public, that's programming. They're planting the seed and preparing people for some planned event in the future. And
Could you think
yeah,
that you think that's a possibility? There's anybody in the UFO community has heard about the theory or whatever, the idea or vision of the staged alien invasion where the government used their own hidden technology to stage an invasion to raise the fear so they can gain control back of the situation. Do you think that's a possibility?
I mean, I've been hearing about Project Bluebeam for a long time, and I don't know if you remember that one Facebook post that was on a few years ago where there's a bunch of kids in a school gym, and all of a sudden, a big giant whale comes up like out of the floor and splashes, and people are like reacting to it. I mean, so this technology is quite advanced. So I could see how they would try to do that, and knowing how everything is public relations and most everything we see is a staged event, and if it's not staged, then they're going to spin it to make it fit whatever narrative they want. I could easily imagine them creating a situation that they think is going to have Americans, maybe around the world, people around the world, but at least Americans emotionally react and want to work together and band together for this perceived threat. And then of course the government comes in to save the day, and then everybody loves the government, right? Because
Right.
the jets came in and took them out, or maybe they'll reveal our TR-3Bs, our own triangle craft, are going to come in and fight them, like in the movie Independence Day.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Independence Day, I think, is a great metaphor for what may be coming, because Hollywood is used to tell us what they're going to do. And I first learned that idea from Jordan Maxwell, the late great Jordan Maxwell. So they're telling us who I are. These are deep magical principles. That, if the universe operates on free will, then in order to manifest the desired outcome, if the elites are trying to create an outcome that's beneficial to them, then all the participants of the ritual, us, the masses, need to give our energy to it willingly in order for them to accurately manifest their desired outcome. So in order to do that, they have to tell us what they're doing. And if we look, a spell is like a contract. So if in business you're offered a contract, there's 4 ways to respond. You can agree with it, you can counter offer, you can argue with it, or you can stay silent. So if you've ever had a third party debt collector come after you, speaking for myself, I've had a few. If you don't respond to that letter within 30 days, that's silence, and silence is acquiescence, and that gives them the green light to move forward in court to get a contract against you. So a spell is the same way. So if all the participants have had full disclosure of what they're giving their energy to, in this case, we're giving our energy to consumerism and buying into this whole idea that Federal Reserve notes are money. Jordan Maxwell liked to say that the Federal Reserve notes are an incremental symbol of our spiritual energy. So if we work and toil all week and get a paycheck at the end of the week, those dollars, which are really just Federal Reserve notes, are debt notes, they're negotiable instruments. Those represent our spiritual energy. So as we give them away, they can siphon off our energy, and so that's all part of this whole ritual. Jordan called it the magic of society. But as long as we're not objecting to this, or the real power position in terms of a contract offer coming towards you is to counter offer. That's the real position of power. So you put it back into the other side. You conditionally accept upon proof of claim of this, or if you agree to do this or that or whatever, I'll agree to what your offer was. But always that counter offer is the place you want to be. And as a whole, humanity, or at least in our country, we've stayed silent. We turn on our TV and we're comforted, and we get our little Oreo cookies out and drink our little beer. And not that I haven't done those things myself, no judgment. But those things tend to pacify us, and we don't really want to look deeper into the situation. Some friends of mine, JJ and Desiree Herchak, like to call it, it's the real doom of the world, is that we're doomed to perfection. And it doesn't matter how long we want to take. We can ignore it. We can try to put it off. We can look the other way. But eventually humanity is going to rise to perfection and be able to get rid of all this stuff that we're dealing with right now with government and the intentions and agendas of those that rule the government, and which don't really have the masses' best interest in mind. So I think I answered your question.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I think you finished the show. We might as well just cut it off right here. That's where that was my goal. That to get to talking about manifestation, how they're, how we can take back our how like people say, take back your power. Like that goes very, very deep. If you really understand it, like, I talk about all the time about how that we've been brainwashed since we as a kid. I have a the tattoo of flag on my arm. I'm sure you've seen it. But I got a tattoo of flag on my arm because I was conditioned from a young child to raise my hand every morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag, blah, blah, blah. And that was ingraining this being to join the military, to be a servant to the military industrial complex, and who knows whatever else I have. I'm scared to go to a professional regressionist because I don't know what else all happened to me, but it doesn't matter anymore because I'm free. Like I know what's going on. I know that this UFO thing is, I've took back my power. Like, I'm starting to teach telekinesis and telepathy. I'm starting to bring that back using pendulums and showing people how to transmute objects just through their words, and using the pendulum just to show energy. I've done that on I should do that on the show sometime. Give people a heads up and have them bring the pendulum in and show. Yeah, that's a interesting thing to do, and show people, the power of the I am and power of the sun meditation in the morning, that first 15 minutes of the sun when it breaks the horizon, taking in those light codes and stuff. If you really want to know, like, the truth, go back to what the Aztecs and Mayans and people that prayed to the sun. And Vedics, you get to the truth through those the real truth through those teachings, and able to get your sovereignty back. But moving on from the Congress, because we have a much more special event than the Congress speaking on Tuesday. It's happening tonight, right after this show, just about an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours from now. We're gonna have what's happening, Brett. I'll let you break it. I'll let you break it to the people.
The blood moon, right? It happens a couple times a year, and it's seen by different cultures in different ways. Fundamentalist Christians see it as a sign of the apocalypse. The Druids, which I've studied heavily, some Druid stuff, they see it as fertility and a chance for a positive transformation. So really, I just look at it as it's symbolic. So as we know with symbols, if you've read Carl Jung's seminal A Man and His Symbols, which I would recommend for everyone, symbols are just benign objects that get imbued with conscious energy. He called it a numinous charge. And, so in other words, like say a swastika, that doesn't have to mean the Nazis. And matter of fact, it meant different things before the Nazis. But the Nazis are a good example of how they changed the definition of that symbol by overtaking the previous charge and recharging that symbol with all the stuff, all the occult stuff that they were into. So, change the direction of the spin, and it means a bunch of dark stuff to us now. But really, that's a symbol that was around the world. It meant many different things. Spinning vortex. It could be a sun, a sign of a storm, positive energy. So symbols are malleable, and it just depends on the level of charge that you imbue it with. So when I look at the blood moon, like you said earlier, it's better to have a positive look on out things, in my opinion, at least. I think we agree there. So look at the blood moon as an opportunity for change. Not that you couldn't do it with any moon, because a moon's just a symbol, just like anything else.
Yeah.
But whatever it is it's going to take for people to be able to transform their lives, be able to transmute their negative energy, to be able to see things from a different perspective in order to process stuck emotions so they could move forward, I'm all for it. So tonight I would just say, everyone go outside, check out the blood moon, admire its beauty, and take solace in the fact that this is your opportunity, or you can at least create this opportunity with this symbol to resolve issues in your life, to recapture some of the energy that's been caught up in circles going around. I know I still have energy from my childhood and other things, even though I've been working on this for 20 plus years. So whatever issues are in your life, use this as an opportunity to take a step forward, process, and then move on. That's what I say. Yeah.
Perfect advice. I love the mindset. Yeah. Whatever, just my take on the eclipse tonight, go outside and check it out. And, it, and think of it as a paradigm shift, into something more positive. Where if you're having a hard time, use this change on a galactic scale to bring change into your life. And I'm right on board with Bret, and I love his mindset, and that's again, that's why he's sitting here tonight on my show, because I vibe with him. I will have people on I don't vibe with in the future, but yeah, Bret's here tonight, and we're just in store for a great conversation. So, Bret, let's get into you a little bit. Your full description, your full bio is in the link below the video. People can check it out, and we're gonna share some at the end of this 2 hours. We're gonna share some pictures and stuff of books that you have, and some other information that you forward to me ahead of time. But what's where did this all start? Where are you from? Like, what was Bret before he had his awakening, or was he always awake?
Well, I don't think I was always consciously awake, but I think, from a really young age, I was into sci-fi. I remember, my parents got divorced when I was really young, about three-ish, and 3 years old. And when my dad would come down from Lake Tahoe to the San Jose Bay Area, where his parents were, my grandparents, we would always watch Star Trek together, sit on the couch and, watch Captain Kirk and Spock and McCoy do their thing, And so I think, if you're into the Michael Salla books now, where he's talking about Star Trek was a model for our future, I think that was early programming for me. Getting into this idea that skin color doesn't matter, because they definitely explored that in the TV show. Not saying off the set there wasn't issues between William Shatner and whoever played Uhura. I forget what her name was, but in the show, I mean, you got blue people, you got black and white people, you got green people, and they're just all treated as other beings. There was no big issue, except for the one episode where the guy was white on one side and black on the other, and then his opposite guy was black on the one side and white on the other. So they're both black and white. Do you remember that show? And then they were black and white on the opposite sides. And so
the original Star Trek?
Yeah, the original Star Trek. So the issue was between those two aliens, that they were prejudiced against each other because one had white on one side and black on the other, and the other was opposite, even though they were both black and white. So it was this huge metaphor for racism. So that was huge for me. Also, I would say In Search Of, hosted by Leonard Nimoy. My parents took me to see Chariots of the Gods at the movie theater, which I think always stuck with me. But it wasn't really until I was at college at Chico State University, which is in the top of the Central Valley in California, where I had a buddy. I played soccer at Chico State, and I had a buddy graduate, move back to Santa Barbara, and where he got his old job as a civilian draftsman on Vandenberg Air Force Base. So at a certain point in time, he calls me up. Oh my God, Bret, you got to see this. I got this document off supposedly a secret space on my computer. You got to come down and see it. So I took a trip down south, visited family, and on the way back up, I stopped in Goleta at my buddy's house, and he showed me this thing called the packet, what I call the packet. And it turned out to be a pre-Behold the Pale Horse affidavit by Bill Cooper. And if you guys are familiar with that famous book, Behold a Pale Horse, I would definitely go out and get a copy of it. I think Gil Carson on Facebook, he's got revised editions of that. So I'm kind of interested to see what updates he has in that book, because that book really laid the foundation for me studying a bunch of alternative things, what many would call conspiracy theories. And, after you read the Behold the Pale Horse book, you're not going to think they're conspiracies. They're really just being covered up, and they're using public relations to kind of steer people's consciousness away from knowing this kind of stuff. But
Wow.
As I worked my way back up north over the next 3 nights, stopping in Santa Cruz and Pleasanton before I headed back to Chico, each night I'd stop with a group of friends. We'd stay up all night. We'd be having beers. We'd be smoking pot, talking about all kinds of stuff, right? And on that third night, heading home, if you guys are familiar with California, I-80 comes out of San Francisco, goes right across the United States, right up through Lake Tahoe, and then out across Nevada, and keep going across the United States. And then there's I-5, which kind of splits California top to bottom. So instead of driving up to Sacramento and hanging a left and going up to Chico, there's a hypotenuse called Highway 505. So I'm on 505. Back then, it was pretty uninhabited. And I stopped at this one turnoff where I usually would either take a nap or maybe go to the bathroom or something. On this occasion, I went to go to the bathroom. And I turned my truck around at the end of the road, facing back towards the on-ramp. And I just got out, beautiful night, no clouds, bright stars everywhere. And I'm going to the bathroom, right? And all of a sudden I see this light going like this. And it stops and goes back the other way. And then it's going like that. Bill Hamilton called them jumpers in his famous book, Alien Magic. And that's what I was looking at. I was looking at a jumper. And at first I'm like, oh, that must be one of those UFO things that I've been starting to read about, right? And then, oh crap, I'm out here all by myself. So I jump back in my car and head back to the freeway. And if any of your listeners have ever been on 505 as it transits onto I-5, it's this big sweeping overpass that comes down. And as I'm on the arc above most of the crowd, and it's relatively flat in the valley, but there's a little bit of foothills where I was as I was driving out of the 505. It comes out of little tiny foothills. You could see this light following me up the valley, paralleling my path up I-5. So there's a pretty good chance that I something happened to me that night, because next I was trying to find a certain friend, and I for some reason could not find the off-ramp. I'd been to his house several times. I drove into a fog bank, which I would later learn in the Whitley Strieber books that fog banks are often used for abductions. And next thing I know, I'm sitting in my car parked, it's running, and I'm almost out of gas. And I thought, wow, that's kind of strange. I didn't realize I was that far out of gas. I maybe just better head back to Chico. So I've told that story to many people, and they say that's why I'm into UFOs so much to this day, doing research, is because something happened to me then. Whether it was good or bad, it put me on the path. And so I don't know exactly what happened to me, kind of like what you were saying earlier about maybe some past traumatic events. I would like to know, because I do think I have a lot of energy stored up in those events, some subconscious trauma that I would like to resolve. Ideally, I would like to resolve all of my negative energy so I could move forward totally 100% me. But I don't think it was positive necessarily, on the one hand, because I think it was military, and either ETs that were involved with the military and saw, I actually took a tour I didn't mention this part. I took a tour of Vandenberg Air Force Base with my friend, and he was explaining to me as we were driving around the base that they know exactly who I am right when I went through the gates. They have a whole file on me just because I'm there, and they want to know who's on the base, which makes sense from a national security standpoint, right? You don't want some strangers coming on the base when you've got, national security secrets all around. So I don't think it was a coincidence. I got the packet, toured the base, and had my first genuine UFO sighting where I possibly had missing time. I say possibly because there's no other witnesses there. And I don't have full memory recollection, but I suspect that it happened. So if it's military, I'm thinking that's probably not good. But on the other hand, I think ufology is a fast track to spiritual growth because it puts you in touch with many different spiritual traditions from around the world. It puts you in touch with alternative history. It puts you in touch with the formation of governments. All these things and the true intentions of governments. I mean, just look at our government and how we've kept secrets for so long. I mean, why would anyone who studied American history really think that this disclosure is anything more meaningful than just getting thrown a bone? Because this whole thing is a setup, and I think so. That's the positive part of that experience for me, is that it put me on a spiritual path, which has gotten me to a point where I can discern when I'm being fed BS or not. And when we're talking about the government seems to have lost track of who gave it power. The people gave it power. But I talk about this concept in my lectures. The government is what's known as a golem. And so if you're familiar with the Jewish tradition of the golem, the Christians were attacking the Jewish village because the Christians were blaming the Jews for the death of Christ. And so the rabbi, looking to try to save his village before they get wiped out, he takes the Zohar, their magic book, goes down to the side of the river, fashions a figure out of clay, and brings it to life. But so again, that's a spell, right? And so it's a contract. So there's going to be terms to the contract, and it's usually a trade-off. Okay, so the trade-off with the golem traditionally is that once it's done doing its job, in this case, it was defending the village against the Christians. Once it dispatched of the Christians or put them down or turned them away, then what a golem does is come back and devour its creator. So this is what we have with government today. We have given the government life. We've brought it to life. Literally, it's a business entity. That's what they call it. They're telling us what it is. And as it has grown and gained power, and now I believe AI is what's backing it, along with maybe a species of gray aliens, maybe some reptilians. I'm not exactly sure. I tend to think it's a species of grays because our country is slowly turning into a centralized governing situation with automaton slaves. You know, that's kind of where we're going with this. That's what the whole communist socialist thing is with the left side of our government. But whatever ETs are there, it's coming back to devour its creator. That's what we're seeing right now. Again, big magical principles. All this stuff is part of the magic of society, as Jordan Maxwell used to describe it. And I'm fascinated by that concept. And the more I look at the world with my magical lens, which is looking at the world in terms of intentions, symbols, and rituals. This is my stuff now. Boy, the truth really comes out when you look at it through your magical lens. So,
yeah, man. What's give me I asked this is one of my questions I ask every guest, and I'm interested in your input on your answer. Do you have any connections in your spiritual path or to Egypt? Like, has Egypt been an integral part of or any part of your spiritual path?
I would say, yeah. You know, how could it not be? It's such a huge subject.
Follow-up question: why? Why is Egypt so present?
Okay, I'll get to that in just a second. So when I was probably 8 years old, my grandma Patricia Lueder in Campbell, California, she was huge into the whole Egypt thing. She had Nefertiti statues and busts and Egyptian artifacts around her house. And in 1978, the Tutankhamun tour came to San Francisco, and she took me to see that. Also adding to my young interest in Egypt was the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose, California, which is the headquarters of AMORC, which is I forget what that stands for, but it's the headquarters of the Rosicrucians. And they have a mock King Tut tomb. So she used to take me to that too. So I guess I've always been fascinated by that and what that means. But really, it was Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods that kind of just blew it open for me, because Egypt was one of the early civilizations that he talked about in that book, and about how that wasn't one example. There's many examples around the world of an advanced civilization that thrived on Earth before our current civilization. It manifested in a different way. it had all these really interesting kings or gods that had human bodies and heads of the hawk or heads of an ibis or an alligator or a dog or a cat. And, as a kid, I was just fascinated by it. I didn't really know what it meant. After reading Fingerprints of the Gods, I was pretty convinced that Graham Hancock was onto it, and that there was some kind of a civilization advanced, maybe more advanced than us, since we can't duplicate the pyramids today, or structures like Sacsayhuaman, I think is how you pronounce it, from Bolivia. I forget what Teotihuacan is, the city in Bolivia. Or some of the stuff in Peru at Machu Picchu. Many of these different structures, we can't duplicate that today. So, but on the other hand, maybe we have some technology that's more advanced than theirs. So it's just interesting to me, a little sidebar, is how the different civilizations that you study in the past, Egypt or Atlantis or Lemuria, there's Oceania, there's several others. Michael Tessarian goes into that in his book, Atlantis, Alien Visitation and Genetic Manipulation. Great book. Everyone should have it. The way civilization manifests is different each time. And I don't think civilization has manifested like ours maybe ever in Earth history. It's unique. But at the same time, I think our controllers are doing this. They destroy civilization when they want to, raise it back up. The whole idea, as the struggle between the light and the dark continues, is to create a civilization that's conducive to control. But then on the other hand, the light forces would try to, at the same time, it's a struggle, a global struggle for the control of human consciousness. They're trying to turn whatever that is into something that's conducive towards growth and enlightenment, or what many refer to as ascension. So Egypt is hugely important because of the advanced technology, because of their culture, and the idea that there may be hybrids of some kind, that there was genetic interference in our lineage at some point. Some of my more recent work has been into demonology. And so there's this whole crossover between aliens, which if you watch Ancient Aliens show, Giorgio Tsoukalos, they talk about the gods as being aliens. That's Von Daniken stuff right there. I'm not saying that's not true, but what doesn't get talked about a lot is that if you go from a biblical perspective, or even Buddhist or Hindu, where these traditions talk about demons, that there's a demonic side to all this. And when you start getting to the occult magic of the Egyptians, how they were like the Egyptian Book of the Dead, for example, once you start messing around with these kind of things, it starts to cross the line of whether or not it's just humans trying to manifest as part of their daily lives. I mean, God gave us the powers to manifest. So you can't say that manifestation or magic is evil. But what I think has happened over the tens of thousands of years, however old Egypt is, and I know Robert Schoch would say the Sphinx is 10,000 plus years old. So, but Zahi Hawass would say, no, it's only 5,000. And it's like, come on, you guys, it's older than what Zahi Hawass says. More PR over in Egypt. But when you realize that if we do have an enemy that's against the human race, they're going to follow the tenets of the art of war. And that's a book that I would recommend for everybody, because it basically outlines every move that a human has made throughout time. So whether you're at war between nations, whether you're in a fight between individuals or smaller groups, whether you're in a business relationship or you're in a love relationship, the art of war has mapped out every single situation and every single response or counter response that is available. So if there was an enemy, let's just hypothetically say demons are real, fallen angels are real, the dark side's real. If they were trying to beat humanity out of something, let's just use the biblical metaphor. God had a deal with the devil, and God's letting the devil run around to test humans as part of, let's just call it a bet between Lucifer and God. Then the strategy that Lucifer would use would be to usurp the strengths of its enemy, us, and attack us at our weaknesses. That's just basic art of war. Any military around the world knows that. So magic, which is something that I think God created for us to manifest. I mentioned the 3 tools earlier, and I don't think anyone else describes it like this except me, but it's intentions, symbols, and rituals. We use these 3 things to manifest different situations on different levels every day of our life. Okay, but then you get into culturally stylized versions of this, and this is where you get into occult magic, or like Druid magic, or Egyptian magic, or any other kinds of magic, right? But if that was a strength originally for humans, then it would make sense that the enemy would usurp that, take it over, so it's not our strength anymore, which would weaken us, because it would be our go-to move. If we're at a war with somebody and manifestation is our strength, we would want to manifest a victory. So if you take away the tools of manifestation from us, usurp them, now we're a much more weakened opponent, and we could be attacked in our vulnerable spots even more. So I look at the Egyptian history of magic as crucial to the understanding of magic, but I also look at it as the enemy has usurped those traditions. I don't think the traditions we see today reflect maybe the true intentions of those traditions from way back in the time, when maybe those beings, whoever they might be, brought that to earth. So, Book of Enoch, I think, adds a little bit to that when they say, I think it was Azazel that taught humans incantations. So, if you look at it from that standpoint, okay, magic's probably not that good. So,
have you looked at the Emerald Tablets?
I have. It's been a while, but yeah.
Yeah, that they lay out there's some pretty profound truths in there if you can hear them. Right. I just recently, Billy Carson was on a couple weeks ago, and he's Egypt aficionado and everything, and yeah, definitely we was talking about the book, Emerald Tablets, when he was on. Definitely had to look it up afterwards, and found actually some similarities to my own book, I'm Perfect and So Are You, that was a large part channeled from Osiris.
Interesting.
I found a lot of similarities. One in particular, at the end of tablet 12, it says, if you want to call upon my power again, you have to say my name 3 times. Tikatet Redic Vomelides. I don't know what that means, but I do know when I channeled Osiris. And this is a little sneak peek of what I'm about to release. I'm about to this is a recording. The first time I channeled Osiris, it was a recording. I just found the recording. I've been looking for it for over a year. It's on old phone. I finally found the old phone, got it on this computer right here, and I'm editing it right now. Gonna put subtitles to it. But one thing, this is way before any Emerald Tablets ever come into my life. Osiris said to me at the end of the channeling, if I need to talk to Osiris again, say his name 3 times. And man, it's just so much in there. And so for me, Egypt is a pivot point. Everybody that knows me knows ayahuasca is my catalyst. That, but yeah, the Sundance and Egypt is a big part of my heart. And yeah, Osiris is that was a really mind-blowing time for me, and still is unpacking all that stuff. But yeah, I can't wait to release that. It's going to be awesome. I think it's going to really blow a lot of minds when they hear this. But yeah, so we're coming up on a break right now, and when we get back, I am gonna ask Bret the question I've been waiting to ask him ever since I booked him. I have experience with Sasquatch, Bigfoot, in Whoopee ceremony, and I know my friend has extensive experiences with Bigfoot, so that's going to come up after the break. Yeah, so I'm so excited for that. And yeah, so before just taking up these last few moments before the break starts, what do you got coming up, Bret? Like, where are you gonna be? Where can everybody find you at coming up? Like, what's next on? Is he writing another book? Is he gonna be at Disclosure Fest? Like, where's Bret gonna be? What's he doing?
Well, my next appearance will technically be at the Rob Potter Summer Conference in Mount Shasta, July. I think it's 7th through 9th. and I'm not sure what his website is. I should know that, but I think just Google in Rob Potter's summer conference at Mount Shasta, something will come up. Right now I'm an alternate speaker, but already a couple speakers have dropped out, so I'm moving up the line here. Hopefully I'm going to get to speak there. Either way, I'm going to be there because it's a really great time. I was just at the New Living Expo in San Mateo, and it's just this massive, even it was only like a third attended. First time it's happened in 2 years because of COVID. And it's just this massive, just like almost like a gross just display of too many wild and competing energies. And it was just really, it's a lot to handle, even though I still had a good time. But Mount Shasta, Rob Potter Summer Conference, is like the opposite. It's much smaller, more intimate. People are more friendly. That overall atmosphere, I think, is much more positive. And always great speakers up there. Hopefully I'll be one of them this year. We'll see. And then the experiences, like I don't even get a hotel anymore. I just camp. And there's different places that you can camp around town or up on the mountain. And you're just up all night watching the sky and having great conversations with people. And so that's where I'll be next, July 7th through 9th. After that, I'm not exactly sure. I'm hoping to be speaking at the Church of Glad Tidings in September, which is in Yuba City. And that's for those that don't know, that's the church that had a 9-month magical, occult, spiritual warfare battle with the founder of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, over the spiritual legal rights of his daughter, Ray LaVey, who is now Deborah Joy Bryan. And they literally defeated Anton LaVey using the name of Christ. I mean, wasn't just like one time. I mean, it happened over 9 months. But it's a really incredible story called The Serpent and the Savior by Dave Bryan. Go out and get that book. If you guys are into occult magical studies or occult spiritual warfare like I am, it's definitely a must-have. And so those are the only appearances that I have coming up. I know I'm going to be going to Jordan Maxwell's funeral next weekend in LA. That should be really interesting. I'm going to see if I can get some video footage and maybe run that a little bit on my show. I just started my show, the Bret Lueder Show. I got it on BitChute right now under Esoteric Guide. That's my handle. And I'm sure I'm going to try to get a couple interviews while I'm down in LA. And then otherwise, getting my website up, esotericguide.us, in the next coming weeks. But in the meantime, you could meet me on Facebook, Bret.Lueder, and come drop me a line. Let me know what you think. All comments are welcome. I just ask everyone to be civil because I can get sassy myself, so I don't like to be triggered into little arguments, but it still happens sometimes.
We're all still human. We're all going through the experience still.
That's right. That's right. I have a lot to learn still. But I'm currently writing 2 books right now. One of them is called Agents of Ascension, and it's about how the inner Earth people, some inner Earth people, because there's light and dark inner Earth and there's light and dark UFOs. So some inner Earth people and some occupants of UFOs have been perpetrating a formal public relations campaign upon our surface societies with the intention of steering us towards ascension. And then there also are opposing PR campaigns from the forces of the dark, just to simplify, that are trying to disrupt that campaign. So that book's called Agents of Ascension. I'm writing that one right now. And then I kind of took a little bit of a break writing the book I was trying to get out, and it's just one thing after another. Campfire in Paradise in 2018 messed it up, and now COVID. Now we got hyper engineered inflation, and oh my God, right? It's just like trying to get your act together just to make this show is more difficult than it's been in the past. But that book's called Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. And it's the volume 2 in a 3 volume set called The Esoteric Guide to the Reggae Vibe. And that's really, it's a story of the role of the roots reggae Rastas, guys like Bob Marley, in terms of a global struggle for the control of human consciousness. So I think the Rastas have played a big part in that. They are the leader group, as I name it, in the Cultural Creatives. So if you guys are familiar with that book, The Cultural Creatives, those guys are statistically, Sherry Anderson and Paul H. Ray are outlining, statistically showing that in America, there's this movement to buck against the traditionals or the modernists. And it's just a third group emerging that has all these new and innovative ideas and how to live a sustainable life and how to do consumerism ethically and politics ethically and all these great things. Well, the Rastas have been doing this and preaching this stuff since the 1920s. I mean, or 1930s, let's say. Even before Selassie, there was a bit of a movement. But then when Selassie comes on the scene, that kind of coalesces these different factions into, oh my God, he's the second coming of Christ. He's fulfilling the prophecy of Marcus Garvey. And now we're the Rastafarians, right? And so, but they've been doing communes and preaching in Ital living, which is pure, clean vegetables, good water living, honesty in commerce and government for 70 plus years before this study, The Cultural Creatives, comes around. So that's what the trilogy is about. The Esoteric Guide to the Reggae Vibe Trilogy, book 1. Let's see right here. Book 1 is Song in Your Heart, Story of the Search for the Lost Note. Right. Book 2, I should have the cover any week now. It's been taking a long time to come out. My artist guy's been going through a lot of stuff as well. And that's just how it goes sometimes. You just got to kind of roll with it. Yeah. But Tales of a Heavy Heart, UFOs, Magic, and Impending Doom. I'm going to get Agents of Ascension done by the end of summer. And then hopefully by Christmas, I'll have this next book out too. Ooh. So that's, and then Phenomena Magazine articles in between. My COVID article should be out by the end of the month at phenomenamagazine.co.uk. In part 1, I break down some of the history of the documents that the elites have shown us, because it's a ritual, right? And they have to tell us what they're doing. Doesn't mean they have to put it on local news at night, but they got to tell us somewhere, and that somehow satisfies the universal law that we're told. So they put it out in these documents. So I got the Kissinger report. I break that down. And I also break down the Rockefeller PR document that talks about the 4 different scenarios. We're just in the first scenario called Lockstep, and it's supposed to last through 2024. So that's why they keep dragging this COVID thing on. But if it goes to 2024, and I hope it doesn't, watch how it just magically disappears in 2024. So that's part 1. Part 2, I interview a nurse from I got to keep these women anonymous. They don't want to lose their jobs. But one from a famous Bay Area hospital, a world famous hospital, one from a Santa Cruz famous medical establishment, and then also an alternative doctor, Dr. Stephen Ezra West, who is all about coming out and using his name. And I really respect him for doing that. I think you've met Stephen. You might have met him at Mount Palomar last year. He spoke in the little bowl there. He's a really unique health practitioner. With a lineage. His dad was C. Samuel West. Anyway, those 3 health practitioners are quoted. They've given some amazing information about their experiences working in the hospitals and the hypocrisy and the kickbacks that the hospitals are getting. And there's so much information. I had 400 pages of information to go to in these articles, and I had to whittle it down to 2 parts at 3,000 plus words each. My editor wanted to just strangle me, because I'm putting him in a position where he can't publish articles that easily without bumping other stuff, but he really likes my stuff. So he made an exception for me this time. So I got to give a shout out to Brian Allen at Phenomena Magazine. Thank you, Brian.
Nice. Thanks, Brian. Don't know you, but thank you.
Yeah. And a bunch of stuff I couldn't put in there. So, but I did get some stuff about Bill Gates in there. He's quoted as saying, if we use certain things and vaccines, we could reduce the population by 10 to 15%. I mean, so he's coming around and telling us. They're telling us, right? So
yeah. All righty. Well, we're about to go to break. Give it a little time. I'll bring you back in after break, Brett, and give you time to get a drink or do whatever you need to do. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining us. We're going to be right back in about two short minutes. And yeah, stand by for station identification.
Riding divine horses, yes, the forces of the sun, with gentle touch, it means so much to bring our dreams each other free.
You are listening to Eagle's Nest Podcast with Drew Banky. Shocking accounts of UFOs, NDEs, Bigfoot, and angels are the vibe, but no telling where the conversation goes. The aim is we all get one step closer to the truth of our existence with each episode.
You are listening to KUNX Digital Broadcasting, Kansas City, Missouri, and Van Buren, Arkansas.
All right, everybody, welcome back. And yeah, me and Bret are gonna start talking about Bigfoot. I know he's got some interesting experiences with Bigfoot, and I heard him speak at Shasta on that a few years ago, a little bit, and so I know he has some interesting takes on it. If anyone knows me, talk about in my first book, I'm Perfect and So Are You. Available on Amazon, sacredjourneyswithin.com. You can go check that out at the store. Both my books are available there. But yeah, had an experience in a Uwhippie ceremony. If you don't know about Uwhippie, Google it, and you can check that out for sure. But yeah, as soon as Bret's ready, looks like he stepped away for a second, but he will be back in just a moment. Don't you worry. I'm sure he's taking care of something very important. But we're going to be talking about his Bigfoot experience, his take. I know his take. I shouldn't say his take because I don't know his take. We're about to find out. But I know his experience is slightly different than mine, and I would love to. I can't wait to have you listeners share it in the chat room. Let me. Thanks, Angels Are Life. Too much information. My beautiful wife's in the chat room. Fred Langston, Sam, Kaz, thanks for always supporting me. Appreciate you. Jillian, thanks for joining us. Am I missing anybody in the chat room? If you're not in the chat room, escape the situation. Oh, hey, Jess. Glad you're with us. Michael, thanks for joining us. Yeah, Race, if you're listening, pipe up in the chat room. Love to hear from you, brother. He may just be catching this on the backside. There was a question at the end. Yes, too much information. Jordan Maxwell did pass. He did pass for sure. Anyone ever hear of Cheryl Casca? Yeah, all these. Yes, they're good ETs. Cool. So we're about to bring Bret back in and about to jump into this Bigfoot conversation. This is a conversation I've been dying to have on my program. It's always something I love to talk about. So welcome back, Bret, to Eagles Nest Podcast for the second half of this dynamic conversation with my dear brother Bret. So let's talk about Bigfoot, man. How did this all happen? How did the interest get started in Bigfoot? Let's go from the beginning. Like, how did you get turned on to Bigfoot?
I think when I was a kid, I saw Legend of Bogey Creek. It was an early documentary back in the late 70s, and scared the bejesus out of me. But that was really my first kind of foray into Bigfoot. Like I said earlier, it wasn't like I started studying Bigfoot in elementary school. It was years later that I went to the Bay Area UFO Expo. I think I got that right here in this set of interviews from the Bay Area UFO Expo. I got to interview this gentleman right there. Is that a little, there we go. Kiwani Lapsaritis right there. Out of a set of bigwigs on these interviews. Jordan Maxwell's in there, Bill Burns, Lloyd Pye, the late great Lloyd Pye, Brooks Agnew. Kiwani's interview, I think, was the best out of some really great interviews. And so his lecture blew my mind because he made the connection between Bigfoot and UFOs. And so if Bigfoot isn't fringe enough, right? He goes and brings in UFOs, and it's like he's the fringe of the fringe. So yeah, he got when I did a UFO Hunters Guide right behind me here, this blue and yellow book was done before the Ukraine incident. So I don't know, that's a kind of a coincidence right there, yellow and blue. But I got a tip from Kiwani in my Bigfoot section, and I also hit up Lauren Coleman. I guess you could call him the most mainstream of the crypto hunters that are out there. And when Lauren Coleman found out that I was having Kiwani in the same book as him, he ripped me a new one and said I was doing a disservice to both Bigfoot research and ufology. So I knew I was on the right path after that. So Kiwani, I did this interview with Kiwani in that set that I just showed you. And afterwards, it was a great interview. Afterwards, he says, hold on just a second. And he's looking up like this. He's going, oh, they're telling me that you could come up and have an experience. And he lived in Central Washington at the time. And so, you know, I think it took me another year to get up there in like 2009 or 10. And I made it up to Central Washington. I met with Kiwani in a little town called Carnation. And they had this tiny little Mexican restaurant. And he took me out to dinner. And so we had a great conversation, kind of like we're having now. And then towards the end, he goes, you know, are you skittish at all? And I'm like, well, I don't know. He goes, well, I would have a drink or two if I was you, just to be safe. And I go, okay. So I had a couple drinks. And then he takes me back through the forest to his house. He lives on a street, but it's a gravel street, no pavement, no sidewalks. There are neighbors out there, but some of the neighbors you can't even see because it's so jungly. And he says, okay, so we're coming back to my house now. You just be ready. Anything could happen. I'm like, oh, okay. So I figured if nothing too bad's going to happen because he's going to be there. It's not like they're just going to kill me or something, right? So these are the kind of thoughts I'm going through my head. I mean, it's pitch black out there. And we find our way to his little porch, and he puts his hand like on my forearm and says, hold on, you know, we're gonna sit out here for a minute. And I go, okay. So we sat in these two chairs, and out of nowhere, Drew, this big hoot comes from, I mean, it was pitch black, but it had to be at least 30, I would say 30 to 50 feet away. And it sounded like it was an owl, but not any owl that you've ever seen. This owl, you know, if our little 1 to 2 foot tall owls could make this kind of sound, it would explode making this kind of sound. This was like wow. A 6 foot owl. It was just blowing me back, right? Like that old Memorex tape commercial where the guy's sitting with his headphones on in the chair, and it's like the slogan was, is it live or is it Memorex? And he's being blown away by the sound. That's what it was like. And so you mentioned 3 earlier. Well, this thing hooted at me 3 times in the front at us. I'm gripping my chair like, holy crap, what is that? You know? and this thing circles around the back of the house. You know, meanwhile, Kiwani's sitting there and he's going, I wish I could see your face right now. And he's chuckling. And so it goes to the back of the house and hoots 3 more times. And then it comes back around to a 3rd spot and hoots 3 times. So you mentioned 3 earlier. So 3 in magic is significant because it's a consecration or initiation. And so then he did the Bigfoot did 3 sets of 3. So that's like saying that's completion. So it's like the Bigfoot was saying, okay, now you know we're here. Now we know you're here. Welcome. And now you're in our yard. Let's have a great weekend, kind of a thing. That's kind of a loose interpretation of that. But they were acknowledging that I was there, and they wanted me to know that they were there. So this is like 11:30 at night. I was literally supposed to set up my tent out back. And that's how Kiwani, that's his like recipe, is you expose yourself to the Bigfoot. You have love in your heart. You don't have any weapons. You don't have any cameras, no intentions to film or record, and let them come to you, because he says they read your mind. They read your aura. They're shapeshifters, interdimensionals. But at that time, I'm like, Kiwani, I am not going to set up a tent at 11:30 at night after that. He's like, I can't, my house is messed up. You can't come in. I'm like, Kiwani, I'll sleep on the floor. I'll go into a corner. I don't care. I'm not going out back after that. So he's like, okay. So he lets me into his house, and I roll out my bedroll, and I'm laying there. And on his way into bed, he's like, okay, so just know that these things are interdimensionals. And if you see anything in the middle of the night, don't worry. It's just them. They're probably coming to check you out. So I'm like, okay. So luckily I like to sleep on my stomach. So if I wake up, I'm usually looking down at a pillow or the side of my bed or something. But in the middle of the night, I have one leg extended, and there was like this feeling like goes like a fingernail up the back of my calf or like a stick or something. And I must have jumped an inch from a flat position, sleeping, awakened, and then startled like this. And I think I gained air, and I was too afraid to turn around and look. All right. So that was like the first 8 hours that I was in Washington at Kiwani's house. The whole rest of the weekend, interesting experiences. I heard footsteps outside my tent in the middle of the night where you could hear a human coming from anywhere. All of a sudden I would just hear footsteps, right? So it was definitely something. I'd hear breathing. They would flick the top of the tent too, like with their fingernail, like zzz, on the nylon, and that would startle me. And by the end of the weekend, I mean, I heard them in the middle of the night. I heard them hooting across this little valley to each other, these three of them. It was awesome. It was awesome. And so Monday morning, I'm like packing up my tent, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm really disappointed that I didn't get to see one, right? Even though I had some great experiences that most people would really love to have if you're interested in this subject. And as I'm thinking that, all of a sudden I hear footsteps coming up the slope from behind me in the leaves. Shh, shh, shh. And so I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. So I'm like in the catcher's position, like trying to take a steak out of the ground. And all of a sudden I'm like frozen. I'm like, oh shit, what am I going to do? And so I get a hold of myself. I take a deep breath and I stand up, and I'm like, okay, this is it. I got to do this. Right. So I turn around slowly, nothing. I walk across this little grass patch next to this little woodshed, and I'm looking down to the side of the woodshed, down the slope, and I see leaves kicking up like someone's walking. And there's nothing there. And I'm just watching this going like, this is incredible. And this thing walked up to me, like with 8 to 10 feet of me, and the stop. And I'm going like this, expecting to see something. And then out from the leaves pops this orange-breasted robin. And I'm going like, whoa, what just happened here, right? And I'm standing there looking, and then the bird just like pecked a little bit and then flew off. And then that was it. So I went back in the house, and I told Kiwani what happened. And just like one of my old teachers, Hank Wesselman, the Howley Hawaiian kahuna, said to me, Kiwani said a similar thing. He said, you're going to have to decide what that was yourself. I can't tell you what that was. So it's a part of your own spiritual journey, and you have to learn discernment and how to search your own heart and make those decisions yourself. So at the time, I was pretty frustrated by that answer. I thought they would have told him something, or maybe because he was in psychic connection with them. But looking back, I see why that had to happen. I had to sprout my own antlers. I had to get rid of my own training wheels, whatever metaphor you want to use. Yeah. And I decided that I actually was confronted by a Bigfoot, because I know that I saw the chances of a single robin kicking up and then flicking just like a foot all the way up the side. Like we're talking like a 40-foot trail of these footsteps, like coming up, the leaves kicking up. I thought that was far too least likely to happen. And that I actually did, given where I was and all the experiences I had the whole weekend, I decided I was confronted by a Bigfoot that day. So I had 2 more trips to Kiwani's house over the next 3 years. And in 2014 was the last trip. And turns out I figured out, because I'm a little slow on the uptake, they were trying to startle me on purpose because I was skittish. And I realized from this is the Bigfoot teaching me about my own fear. I was scared of the police pulling me over. I was scared of not having a license on me. I was scared of not paying my electric bill. I was scared people weren't going to like me. I was scared my girlfriend was going to break up with me. I was scared on all these levels, and I didn't really realize I just lived with those things thinking that's normal. But really, that taught me that because over the 3 trips, literally it was three days each trip. So again, 9 for completion. At the end of that third set of 3, the 9th day, they sent Kiwani a message saying, I have a good heart. So it, now I kind of see the plight of some of my girlfriends in the past when they couldn't get through to me because it took the Bigfoot 3 years and 9 days to, get through my thick skull and all my garbage and my negative energy and my fear. So that really taught me a lot about myself and put me on that path of trying to conquer my fear, including fighting traffic tickets. Of course, that's what this DVD right there is about, an American Law Primer. It's a summation of all my stuff trying to deal with the cops. They're just trying to rip people off. They say it's in the guise of safety, but they're the actual incidences that involve needing to be saved by a reckless driver, or like 1% to 2%, and the rest is them revenue generating. Anyway, that's a whole nother big avenue of fear that I had in my life. But the Bigfoot were teaching me about my own fear, and I was blown away by it. I'll forever be grateful to Kiwani for those experiences there. And so I've had several experiences since too. We could talk about those if you want, or whatever you want.
Yeah. Just I love that you answered so many of my questions that I was gonna ask you. Like, I wanted to hear your experience on Bigfoot, but I also wanted to hear your take on. There's a big discussion whether they're another species of animal, a bipedal animal on this planet, or if they're interdimensional beings. I know for a fact I saw one in a closed room in a Uwupi ceremony, and it entered and exited through closed doors and windows, and
Wow.
a totally secure room. It walked around 50 people in the room undetected, and it showed itself to me and another person beside me.
You're a lucky man.
The biggest thing I took away from that was I had a dream a week or 2 later where I was the Bigfoot. I saw how the Bigfoot entered the room through an interdimensional portal. And it was opened up by our songs and through our heart of manifestation. All 50 people in the room was on the same heart wave and intention, and that's how I entered the room. So I got to see the mirror. I got to see the mirror aspect of that moment in time from the other perspective. I saw Drew sitting there. That's what really freaked me out. But I learned a big lesson. I learned multidimensionality and bilocation from experience, not just understanding or read about in a book. It was from actual experience. And all my experiences with crafts or ETs, I've had lessons from it. So this is one of the things that I vet people really like on knowing. People don't know it, but I ask them, what lesson did you learn from it? You already answered that question. So I know that this experience, this is the second time I heard the experience, particularly with the feet coming up the hill. I remember that from Shasta, you speaking about that. And that's what really, I knew that, because I probably heard 100 different Bigfoot stories. About 10 of them I believe, because most of them don't have a lesson involved. It's just a story. When I eventually ask the lesson, I don't know what you're talking about. That's the way the spirits told me to vet people. Ask them what the lesson is from all these experiences. If they don't have a lesson, they don't have an experience. They're just trying. They have different reasons why they're telling the story. So I'm glad that you found a deep spiritual lesson out of that experience, because I do believe they're interdimensional beings wholeheartedly, 100%. So let's, if you got any more stories, if you got one in particular, share it, man. Like an experience that you have with Bigfoot.
Well, so Kiwani said that now that I've had those experiences, that they all know who I am now, because there's only like 6,000 or 7,000 of them, he said, and they're all psychically connected. So once that group that was near Kiwani's house knew who I was, that all of them knew who I was. So I didn't really know what to make of that when he said that. But in like maybe later that year or 2015, a friend of mine who recently passed away, his name is William Henderson Everone. He was a UFO contactee and the grandnephew of Jack Pappy Henderson, who's the ufologist studiers out there will know that name. He's the pilot that flew the wreckage from the Roswell crash to Wright-Patterson Air Base to the infamous Hangar 18. And William, my friend, was 12 years old, living in San Diego when Jack Pappy came to the house after that mission and said he told the whole family he saw live bodies. So William and I met each other in Chico, and so just a great guy. That experience at age 12 changed his whole life.
So hold on just a second.
Sure.
So he said he saw physical carbon-based bodies that were transported with the craft.
According to William, his uncle Jack Pappy, the pilot, told the family that he saw live bodies as part of his cargo that he was carrying to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
How many?
I don't remember, but I think from my studies, I think it was three bodies.
Roswell's coming up too. I think I might go to that one. Roswell, the 75th anniversary, they're holding a shindig down there, and Roswell's pretty close to me, so I might make it out to that one.
That's a good one to go to. Sure, I'll go to that at some point. But so this is the guy who I'm with, and strange stuff happens with him all the time. But there was fires in Chico, like the campfire happened in 2018. There's been a series of fires going back to like 2007 or 2008, and they seem to always get worse. Well, on this one particular occasion, the smoke was just engulfing Chico. So I'm hanging out with William, and we're like, let's get out of town. Let's go camping somewhere. So we headed up north, and then west of Red Bluff, which is in between Chico and Redding, we headed out. I forget, Highway 36. Excuse me, I think it is. Or did we go to 299? I forget. But we wound up going over the Mendocino Range and over to the Mad River, and finding it was a Tuesday, and we're looking for a campsite. So we find this campground, and it's like 20-something sites. They're all empty except two of them. And it's a boating kind of a lake. I think it's a river, and they dammed up each side, so it turned it into kind of a lake, but they call it the Mad River. And clearly the families were out boating or something. So we just picked a good spot. We started setting it up, and like within 15 minutes of us setting it up, a huge branch crash happens across the little camp road in an area where there was no campsite and there was no humans, and it was all dried leaves all around. So you could hear if someone was going to walk in there or walk out. And immediately William and I looked at each other like, it's Bigfoot. They're letting us know that they're here. And so that's happened several times since my experiences with Kiwani. They seem to like to let me know when they're in the area. Oh. And so there's a bunch of little stuff along those lines I could tell, but I think the more juicy story is in 2020. I had a dream in December saying I had to be on the mountain in August of this last year, in 2021. So I wound up being in Mount Shasta, August like 9th or 10th. And it turned out it was this big astrological time called Lionsgate. And I had no idea. I didn't find out till after. So I showed up at the upper parking lot. Lowell Johnson supposedly got led into Telos up at the upper parking lot. So I don't know if you've heard of Lowell Johnson, but he's probably on the show at some point. I'll see him in July up at the Rob Potter Summer Conference. But so I'm up there. A lot of people have had experiences in the upper parking lot, and I wasn't feeling it. So I walked over to the kiosk where there's a map of the mountain, and I noticed that on the north side of the mountain wasn't very much stuff. So I thought, I think that's where I'm supposed to be. So I went and stayed at a friend's house in Weed. We looked for information about trails and stuff on the north side of the mountain, and there's just very little stuff about it. It's all the stuff's on the south side of the mountain. And So, you know, the lava fire had just ripped through there. It wasn't actual lava, but they called it the lava fire. It ripped through Weed and then the north side of Shasta. And I forget what that little town is on that northeastern side of Shasta, the mountain, but it ripped all through there. So the air quality is really bad. But we found this trailhead, and a friend of mine, like 3 different people in Mount Shasta, never even heard of this trail. So a friend of mine in Weed found the directions, texted me the directions, and I went and drove all through. It was like someone let off a nuclear bomb. All the trees were burnt. Stuff was still smoldering, but there was no fire people there, no rangers there. I drove right up to this trailhead. The kiosk there was all burnt out, and all the metal was melted, and the trail was destroyed. So I'm like, well, what do? I came all this way. So I looked ahead of me, and I could see this creek, and it looked like a mud flows had spilled over the side. So I went and investigated, and I'm like, you know what? This is where I'm supposed to head up this creek. So I locked up my car, grabbed some water, some cashews, and I started heading up the creek. Well, I'm saying prayers the whole way up there, right? I'm a Christian. I'm learning how to be a Christian. My guy's Jesus. So I'm talking to Jesus all the way up the hill, right? All the way up this dry creek bed. Well, as I'm going, the sides get bigger and bigger. So literally I'm trapped inside this thing, and it's all big boulders and rocks. So if I had to run from a lion or a bear, I mean, I was getting eaten. Okay. I had no weapons because Kuani said, don't bring any weapons when you're out there. And the Bigfoot, if you send out the love vibes, the Bigfoot will protect you. So I figured, well, they knew who I was. I don't know if you met a lady named Nancy Boykins in 2019 at Mount Shasta, where I first met you for Nico and Tracy's event up there. This lady came to my table and gave me this smoky quartz. And I brought it with me. I think that's why she gave it to me, so I could carry it with me on this trip. So I held it in my left hand. We're walking. I'm saying prayers. 2 hours into my journey, Drew, big old branch crash on the upper left side of the bank. And so, again, first thought is fight or flight, right? Oh my God. And then I realized, well, I can't run because the boulders are too big, and the sides of the banks are too steep. I can't climb out. So I better, whatever it is, I better just stick it out. Took a couple breaths, realized, okay, I gained my mind back. It's not a lion, because a lion would have attacked me from behind, and it wouldn't have been so clumsy as to make that kind of a crash, you know, stepping on dry leaves and branches.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
So I crossed the lion out. So I'm like, okay, maybe it's a bear. So a second branch crash happens. It seems like it's closer to the bank. So I step up on a boulder, and I'm like looking as if I'm going to see something right there. I mean, the noise was right there. Didn't see anything. And so it's like we're cat and mouse. It must have been, it seemed like forever. It was probably like 5 minutes. Silence, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe I can just sneak by it and keep going up the dry creek bed, and it won't, I can just move past it. And right when I thought that, Drew, a branch crash happened behind me on the same side of the river, of the creek. And so I thought, oh, well, that's not a bear, because a bear, I would have heard it walk from the first series of branch crashes, the first 2. I would have heard it walk all the way back like 50, 60 yards to where the one happened behind me. And so I go, oh, it's Bigfoot. Because number one, Bigfoot, they're known for making the branch crash sound.
Yeah.
Number 2, they're psychic. So it read my friggin' thought that maybe I could squeak by it and keep going up the dry creek bed. So it made a branch crash behind me as if it was telling me, go ahead. Just keep going. We checked you out. You're welcome. Okay, so it was a whole big survival ordeal at the end of that, because I was really out of shape and I was breathing smoky air. I didn't make it to the falls I was headed to. I was pretty disappointed. It was a struggle for survival all the way back, because I couldn't go in the creek because the water broke. And now it was a flowing like river. So I had to stay up on the side where the fire happened, and it was just destroyed, right? So anyway, that's a whole nother sidebar to this. But the next day, I'm meeting with a gentleman who's going to help me put the booklet together for this law DVD right here, okay? And we meet at the little smoothie shop there. I forget what it's called, but I'm going to go there every time I go there now. They got these little acai berry smoothies. They're just killer. Well, this guy, Aaron, and his wonderful partner, Violet, two beautiful people. They're like, yeah, okay, we're going to meet you there, but we got this guy we want you to meet. So I'm like, okay, bring him, right? Well, it turns out it's this guy. He wrote the book, the Sasquatch and the Spiritual Warrior. And he wrote about a guy in his book that had almost the exact same experience that I did. So in the book, the Bigfoot are teaching this kid how to do spiritual warfare in the dream world against the gray aliens. So we're having this great time talking at this smoothie shop. This guy says, well, why don't you come over to my house and sleep at my house tonight? I got a room for you and we can keep talking. So I go to this guy's house. Great conversation till late in the night. I go to sleep, and that night was the first night I ever got attacked by gray aliens in my dreams. And I literally had to wake up pleading the blood of Jesus. It took me about 7-8 minutes, I would say, before the vibrating of my body stopped and it left. I told this guy about it the next morning, had another good conversation. Over the course of the next few months, these suckers kept coming into my dreams. And so since that experience now, I've learned a bunch more about lucid dreaming and about how to defend yourself in the dream world and how your thoughts can be manifest instantly in the dream world. And there was one experience that I had where one of the aliens, and this according to the author of this book, Sasquatch and the Spiritual Warrior, the Greys like to take the face of somebody they can find in your mind. So like a friend or a family member. In this particular situation, they took the face of this pastor from the Church of Glad Tidings in Yuba City, the church I mentioned earlier that had a spiritual battle with Anton LaVey. Took this guy's face, and a bunch of them were coming at me inside a house from like all the different doorways of the house. And then out of nowhere, I like got the green light and used the electric hands and fried them all. So that's sounds kind of crazy, but that's the kind of stuff now that this would appear to me to be the ongoing teachings of the Bigfoot, of having another experience at the, and also in this book, they talked about the Bigfoot are the guardians of the threshold of Lemuria.
Wow.
So if you're familiar with Mount Shasta and Telos, supposedly they're Lemurians.
Let's go into Shasta a little bit. We got 20 minutes left, but let's go into, for those you're an expert on Shasta. I mean, I can't think of anybody better. Maybe Eric Starwalker. He's up there about Shasta, but Bret Lueder as far as Shasta. Let's hear about Telos, man. Like what is going on inside Shasta right now?
Well, I don't know what's going on inside there, but I know I've been bucking to get in there for a long time. And nobody's getting in there unless they're allowed in there or they have the right vibration. Wow. That's the story you hear over and over and over again. You got to raise your vibration to that level of joy and be able to hold it there. And as much as I've tried, I haven't been able to get there on a level they're going to let me in, at least not that I'm consciously aware of. I met another lady who came to my booth in 2019, that same event where I met you. And she said she goes there all the time and she would help me go there. So later that year in 2019, we talked on the phone, and she said, okay, before you go to bed, set the intention that you want to go there, and that will help me facilitate. So that night I had a dream where I saw myself coming down and materializing for just a moment. I saw people's heads turn and look at me, and then it was gone. I couldn't hold it anymore. So maybe I've been there. I don't know. But I want to go there physically. All right. And so that experience with the Sasquatch I just told you about, supposedly, according to the author of Sasquatch and the Spiritual Warrior, the Bigfoot are the guardians of the threshold of Lemuria. So I made it, according to this book, I made it to that threshold. So they know I'm trying to get in. I think they know who I am because the Bigfoot and the Ascended Masters and the good ETs, they all work together, right? They're all forces of the light. If you're going to look at God as the creator of all things, God creates the ETs too. God creates the shape-shifting spirits, the weird spirits, as they're called. And there's just, there's good ones and bad ones. So None of this really bothers my particular Christian beliefs. I just hold Jesus as the highest. But all this other stuff is all God's creation. So magic, all this stuff is God's creation.
Everything.
So going to the ascended master traditions, Saint Germain, Adama, who's supposedly the high priest of Telos, the city beneath Mount Shasta. I learned a bunch from Diane Robbins. She's known as the ambassador to Telos. She kind of took the mantle from Aurelia Louise Jones, who passed away. And Diane Robbins and I had a series of interviews up in Mount Shasta starting in 2019. We're still friends to this day. Two of my lectures from the best of Mount Shasta right here in this DVD set. It's called Inside Mount Shasta. And Diane, among other things, Diane facilitated a Q&A, question and answer session with Adama. And so I got to ask Adama about their culture. I asked him about sex. I asked him about why we die. And I got some great information about immortality. And then also, too, as they supposedly have been trying to communicate with surface societies for thousands of years in an effort to, according to Diane, they want to join all of humanity together and all the dimensions together so we can all move forward into the fifth dimension or into ascension or whatever you want to call it, the next stage of evolution. Supposedly that's going to happen at its fullest capacity if we all go together instead of just me enlightening myself or you, and then we pass on and we go. But the whole idea is that the earth and all of its inhabitants ideally need to move forward together. So that was a big thing. That and the immortality were the two big things I got out of my research with Diane Robbins. And I don't know
what he said. What was said about immortality?
Well, we can get into that in just a second. But so
hold on, I got some
article right there in the middle. That's a little blurry, but it's March.
Hold on just a second. Hold on just a second.
Yeah.
Let me see. Share screen. Window. Hold on. Here we go. Okay. Had it, but I lost it.
It's all right. That was a quick.
I'm gonna get better with that, but I get better with that over time. Everybody.
I appreciate you trying to plug my stuff. I do. I do.
Man, a big message for me is lifting each other up. That's kind of the why I started this podcast and everything. And
appreciate that.
We talked about that before, and this is the information that you've given us through this, and it's not quite over yet, but yeah, all this information, man, is I hope one of the listeners heard at least one phrase or one story that you may move them to open up their own healing, and moving forward on this. But ultimately, this podcast is about lifting each other up. I had a hard time breaking into this community, and the ceremonies and everything. The UFOs come after the ceremonies. I think the ceremonies help bring UFOs into the existence, but I didn't see my first UFO until far into my medicine journey, and I had a real hard time breaking into this. I finally, I got a foothold in this community now, and I vowed that, treat people how you want to be treated. And I think that's a big lesson moving forward, and it, for anybody, whether it be starting a podcast or just saying hey, or just supporting someone by sharing something on one of your social medias. So I definitely wanted to support you. I definitely felt your vibe at Shasta when we first met, and been dying to get your story out there,
Appreciate
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you being on the Eagles Nest podcast. I know Race Hobbs, Margie K's excited about this episode, as they are all the programming on KUNX. Go over and check out their website, kunx.com, and also follow their YouTube, OnX or KUNX on YouTube. Some of this is I'm broadcasting over there right now. If you're listening on my YouTube, go over and follow theirs. If you're listening on KUNX, come over and follow mine. Share the love. So yeah. So Brett's got books on the way. We're closing this out, brother. So what's your final messages for the people? And what share your heart for the next 5 minutes of just what message do you really want to get out? All the stories, all the experiences are one thing, but what is your basis behind your message for humanity?
That death is a lie, and that we were just starting to touch into this. One of the big lessons from Adama, when I asked him about death and why we die, he said we die because we think we're going to die, and we think and dwell upon the thought of death every minute of every day. Our whole life revolves around the fact that we think we're going to die. And so I processed that for a while, and I realized, if our thoughts create the future, as is a quantum physics kind of idea, the Heisenberg uncertainty principle said that, on one observation, you look at light and it would be a particle, and on the other observation, it would be a wave, but it would be one or the other depending on your expectations. So basically, it's what we expect to happen. It's what we create and envision. The thoughts we put out in front of us is what we manifest. So if we're constantly thinking about death, then it's my contention that it takes those thoughts on average about 75 years to kill us in one way or another. That's why our average lifespan is about 75 years, roughly. And so what he suggested to do was, we have to deprogram that. We have to replace the thoughts of death with the thoughts of immortality, and then live constantly in the moment. If you're always in the moment and you're obsessing literally upon immortality, that's going to change the programming of our society, our societal programming, that we're going to die. Because I think when we're all young, our grandpa or our grandma dies or our pet dies, and then we're forced to ask our parents, what is death? And that puts our parents in a really awkward spot, because I'm sure many of the viewers out there and their parents did the same thing my parents did and said, well, you don't need to worry about that. It's okay. Your grandpa and grandma are in a better place, but death happens to everybody, and it's not something you need to worry about, right? And so that was good for placating my consciousness, but subconsciously you take it in that we're going to die. And I think as young kids, we're really malleable and we believe our parents implicitly. Our parents can do no wrong at a certain stage. When you're young, they're your creators. So you're going to believe them, whatever they tell you. So you take that thought in and you incorporate it into yourself, and you live your life based on that thought, literally. So
well, I do have a couple teenagers, and that mind shift does shift after a while. You're not the end all be all at time when they hit the
it does shift
when they hit the teenage years.
But the programming happens when they do think you're all that,
Yeah. I'm just playing about about teenagers.
But my impression of my parents changed too, so I know right what you mean.
Yeah.
My parents put their pants on one leg at a time, just like everybody else. They weren't super gods like I started out thinking, which is not their fault. It's just the way it is, right? Well, so anyway, I think that's my main message. My friend who I mentioned earlier, William Henderson Everyone, he said there's only really one war left, and that's the war against death. And again, I'll reference a Church of Glad Tidings in Yuba City. It's through them and through my studies with Pastor Dave and Pastor Cheryl and Pastor Jess Parker, all exorcists. They know people that have resurrected dead people. So
amazing.
Death is a lie on so many levels, and we need to convince ourselves that it's a lie first, deprogram from that, and I think at very least we're going to be living a whole lot longer, because the people under Telos, according to Diane Robbins, are 20 to 30,000 years old. They're not in our kind of physical body. They're a channel or two over. They're a little bit lighter, not as dense. But from our perspective, that looks like they're immortal. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they are immortal, but 20 to 30,000 years, I'd take that over 75 any day. especially if I could regenerate my back and keep playing soccer and get rid of the bone spurs in my feet, all that stuff that we accumulate here in this density over time. So I think that's my greatest message. There's a recipe for that. It includes love. Get rid of your negative energy so you can be more fully present in yourself, so you can have all of your energy to project love, and keep it in yourself, vibe it with yourself, vibe it with your family and friends. I grew up a competitor playing soccer, basketball. I did my share of fighting, physically fighting. And this really is no different than that. It's just the rules are different. You're not fighting in the physical world. You're using spiritual tools to lay out the future for you and to end the forces or mechanisms that are acting on all of our bodies and minds and spirits that produce the end result of death. So I think that's my biggest message, is that
I love it. I love it,
death
man.
is a
Like,
lie, and that we need to convince ourselves, no matter how absurd it might seem, we all know the end result, if we don't do that, is death. So what do we got to lose? Let's change our thoughts and think about immortality all the time and let the chips fall where they may. So maybe it'll take a couple generations before those thoughts start to permeate and become part of our DNA. But eventually we're going to get to a spot where we're going to be living tens of thousands of years old, just like a lot of the ancient texts talk about.
I totally believe it, man. I lost my fear when I died in 2019, the Sundance. I was gone, come back, and the biggest thing I brought from that, it was very confusing, because the thing that's driving this voice that's coming to you right now and what's looking out of these portholes never stopped. There was never one blink I stopped, and that was very confusing for me. I didn't even know I was dead for the first 2 minutes. I was gone 5 to 7 minutes at Sundance, come back.
Wow.
And without the fear of death. And I write about it. That's it's very, I love the synchronicities on this show. Always, 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 always. There's always synchronicities telling me that, this is the right guess at the right time, because I speak about I think all fear is a derivative of the fear of death, because any fear of height, any fear of the water, what is the overlining fear that's driving that? It's the fear of you dying underwater. It's the fear of you falling off a building. It's the fear of you getting eaten by a Sasquatch, or whatever. But once you know that, once you know that the being can't be stopped, and there is no, the driver of the car never stops. He gets other cars, he goes to a dealership, but that driver never, there's never a blink that's gone, that light's gone. And that's the biggest thing I took out of my near death. Yeah, and that's true sovereignty. That I was told that is the true sovereignty. Moving things with your mind, and tapping into the original language of telepathy and all that. That's small parts of it. But when you find that true sovereignty in this being, I think that's true enlightenment. And that's coming from a very, very humble. It took me years to be able to say that in public. Like, I really think that enlightenment is when you lose the fear of death. I think that is the overall definition of enlightenment. Granted, it's a big package, but I believe that's,
I like it.
I think that's the basis of it.
Fear is the lack of love. So if there's really only one emotion, love, and all the other emotions like joy and happiness all stem from love, then the lack of love is fear. And really the only thing to fear is death. And all the other subcategories of fear all stem from that fear of death. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Man, there's one other thing that you said that really was sticking out. Oh, the power of manifestation, staying in the present. So I'm just constantly connected now. I don't meditate. I do meditate if something's happening. We had the past couple years have been a lot of deaths in the family, a lot of me going through my own personal journey still, not knowing that I even had a journey left. But obviously there's that journey never stops. But I asked how does manifestation work? And they're like, well, you have a certain manifestation energy. When you think of the past, some of that energy goes there to manifest that in your brain, to bring up that memory, and to create the picture. Or if you think about the future, that energy is going there. When you stay in the present, you keep all that, you keep 100% of that manifestation energy right there in front of your face. And it's kind of the vision that I was shown to let this absorb into my being was I was walking across water and these rocks were forming under my feet as I walked forward. But I would push my foot forward before I could see a rock, just with the trust that a rock would be manifested before my foot touched the water, and it did. And I was showed that that's how powerful the manifestation energy is if you can hold it in the present. So yeah, man, I love synchronicities. I love how they connect. Got to have you back on the show soon. There's
Wonderful.
tons more I want to get into. But
Sure.
yeah,
Anytime. I appreciate it.
This has been 2 hours of a great conversation, and my good friend Jimmy Church gave me some of the best advice that I've ever had as coming into this podcast world and everything. It's always about your next guest, and I'll always focus on the next guest. So, focus on the present. And yeah, I've been looking forward to you ever since I finished up my last interview. I knew this conversation was going to be amazing. Thank you so much for joining me here on the Eagles Nest podcast and KUNX radio and network. So thank you for joining us. Appreciate it, Bret, and got to have you back on soon.
Wonderful. You have a great night.
Any last words?
Come check me out on Facebook. Drop me a line. Let me know what you think. Engage in the conversation.
The one and only Bret Lueder, everybody. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for everybody in the chat room. Kaz, American Road Warrior, the Elf, my wife, Fred, Sam. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Too much information. Thanks for joining me. If you haven't liked, shared, subscribed to the Eagles Nest podcast, please do so now. Give me some support, people. It doesn't cost a thing. Hit that bell in the corner. It'll let you give you alerts for when my show's coming up. My shows are airing every Sunday from 8 to 10 Eastern time, from here until someone takes me off the air. So I'm going to be here speaking the truth, people, trying to bring you the best guests, trying to bring you the conscious connection, trying to bring the truth to the table. I love hearing stories. The stories are part of the journey, but honestly, the conscious connection between everything is the bread and butter, people. So that's what the Eagles Nest podcast is about, and that's what you can sign up for every Sunday when you tune in here. Thanks for all the support, people, and see you next Sunday. We got Jess Rogie from In the Simulation will be here. I know she was in the chat room earlier. Shout out to Jess. Can't wait to have her on. That is my next guest. We're going to get into it. We're going to get in ET. We're going to find out what drove her to start her own show. And yeah, just pick her brain on consciousness and where she's at in life. So yeah, can't wait for the conversation. Can't wait to unpack 2 more hours of mind-blowing consciousness. And everybody, my time is up. So catch y'all next Sunday. Much love and blessings. Namaste.
You are listening to Eagles Nest Podcast with Drew Banky. Shocking accounts of UFOs, NDEs, Bigfoot, and angels are the vibe, but no telling where the conversation goes. The aim is we all get one step closer to the truth of our existence with each episode.
You are listening to KUNX Digital Broadcasting, Kansas City, Missouri, and Van Buren, Arkansas.